There are cases that reveal not just what happened, but what we are willing to believe based on who is doing the telling. Carmelo Anthony was convicted of stabbing 19-year-old Austin Metcalfe to death at a high school track meet and sentenced to 35 years in prison. Yet before the verdict was even read, the internet had already written its own version of events, one shaped by AI-generated fabrications, racial grievance narratives, and a fundraising machine that treated a convicted killer as a martyr. The legal system delivered its answer. The cultural system is still asking its questions. So here is the one that matters most.
Is temporary, but the truth lasts forever.
Jeff Metcalfe finally had a chance to read the words he's been writing in a notebook to address his son's killer.
You said, people think that grief is sadness, but it's not, it's rage.
Oh.
Pure, unfiltered rage. You failed yourself, you failed your parents, you failed society. You don't belong in this community.
That's correct.
Metcalfe's victim impact statement came at the end of Carmelo Anthony's murder trial. For months, the father of Austin Metcalfe has been silenced by a gag order imposed by the judge. Now he's free to speak publicly and says he's also free of something else.
When I woke up this morning, it was a very different feeling. When I woke up, I felt like 1,000,000 pounds had been lifted off my shoulders. Because I used to wake up every morning with this anxiety, with this feeling of dread. And this morning was the first day I woke up with a feeling of peace, comfort, tranquility that I haven't experienced in 14 months. And I felt Austin.
When the evidence is clear and the verdict is final, why does the noise refuse to go quiet? Austin Metcalfe was 19 years old. He attended a high school track meet, a public space, a community event, the kind of afternoon that is supposed to carry no weight at all. His father, Jeff Metcalfe, spent 14 months under a court-imposed gag order, which means 14 months of watching a public narrative form around his son's death without being permitted to respond to a single word of it. When he finally spoke after sentencing, he described the lifting of chronic anxiety as something close to physical, not satisfaction, not victory, but the return of peace he had not felt in over a year.
You know, as a parent, you always want to protect your kids. And to hear my son and the fear in his voice, and I'm not there to fix it.
What was it like sitting in that courtroom with Carmelo Anthony for 5 or 6 days?
Challenging is the first word that comes to my mind. And I'll even say this, I had a little bit of sorrow because I'm human. And that poor boy is fixing to experience a life that I would not wish upon anyone.
Metcalfe says even today he's received death threats and has previously endured doxing of his personal information and multiple swatting calls to his house from people who he says have tried to villainize Austin and the family.
I would hope they take a look in the mirror. And if you have children, and if it was your child who was murdered, would you like people dragging his name through the mud, making memes, making jokes, and just really vile comments?
Where do you and the Metcalfe family go from here?
Well, I mean, this is day one of a long healing process. Because honestly, it's been impossible to start healing.
Carmelo Anthony was 17 at the time of the stabbing. His parents, present throughout the trial, maintain that the proceedings were racially compromised and fundamentally unjust. These are not peripheral details. They are the human variables that make this case impossible to reduce to a single clean conclusion. The mechanics of the killing were not disputed in any meaningful forensic sense. Austin Metcalfe was stabbed. Carmelo Anthony was identified, charged, and convicted. What was disputed, fiercely and with significant public amplification, was context. The defense framed the interaction as a confrontation that escalated, positioning Anthony as a minor responding to perceived threat. The prosecution presented the stabbing as a deliberate act of lethal violence carried out in public, in daylight, surrounded by witnesses.
Look at the effect, not just the effect here between the Metcalfe family and the Anthony family. Look what it did, one, to those kids they have to live with. Two, it took on this huge, wider, let's have a race war throughout the
Surveillance
nation.
footage and witness testimony both placed Anthony at the scene with specificity. There were no significant forensic contradictions that altered the material facts. What the defense relied upon was not the evidence, but the narrative. The claim that jury selection had been racially manipulated through improper exclusion of black jurors, known legally as a Batson challenge violation. That challenge was raised. It was not sustained. The jury convicted. Anthony was sentenced to 35 years, with parole eligibility at approximately 17 years served. He was tried in a jurisdiction that has faced, like most American jurisdictions.
My son is no murder. My son didn't intend to hurt anyone. My son was defending himself. And that's what hurt so bad.
His mother recounts the moment she addressed the jury and made her plea to them during the sentencing phase.
To have mercy on my son. That's what I told the jury. I know they had their minds made up already, so, I mean, really wasn't much I could say to change their mind.
Both parents fighting back emotions and tears as they described what they believe was a flawed trial.
We were delusional. We thought we was going to get a fair shake.
They claimed there were inconsistencies from the get-go, despite witnesses who took an oath vowing to tell the truth.
Everyone actually lied on the stand.
Everyone.
All of the witnesses' statements were inconsistent.
We didn't get justice. A lot of things that were missed that should have been handled a certain way. However, we couldn't say anything. We did what was instructed. We was told, so we just did what we was told.
Documented scrutiny over racial disparities in jury composition and criminal sentencing outcomes. Those disparities are real, they are statistically verified, and they exist as a national pattern that no single verdict can either prove or disprove. What makes the Carmelo Anthony case a study in something larger than itself is not the legal outcome, it is what happened around it. AI-generated content falsely attributed statements to witnesses, attorneys, and family members. Social media ecosystems amplified the fabrications. A crowdfunding campaign raised significant money for Anthony's defense, while Austin Metcalfe's family navigated grief without a comparable infrastructure of public support. The court of public opinion operated on a different evidentiary standard than the court of law, and the two produced irreconcilable verdicts. Jeff Metcalfe said he forgives Carmelo Anthony. He was careful to explain what that means and what it does not mean. Forgiveness, in his framing, is an act of self-preservation, a way of refusing to carry the weight of another person's violence indefinitely. It is not absolution. It is not exoneration. He will oppose Anthony's parole at the 17-year mark. He has memorialized Austin through scholarships and through the ordinary permanence of photographed in his home. Austin's organs were donated after his death, which means that somewhere people are alive today because Austin Metcalfe was at a track meet on a specific afternoon. That is not a redemptive arc. It is not resolution. It is simply what remains when the trial ends and the cameras move on, and a father has to decide every single day what to do with the rest of his life. The question this case leaves behind is not whether Carmelo Anthony is guilty. 12 jurors answered that. The question is what we owe to truth in an environment that manufactures alternatives to it at scale, and whether justice, delivered correctly, is still capable